All right, I'm going to kind of do the opposite of graphing. So here you've got a couple graphs in front of you, and you're going to have to write the equation for it. So I'm going to start with highlighting the graph that I want to look at first. So let's, I'll highlight it in green. So I'm going to look at this one first. Okay, so that you can disregard the other line. And I will say that starting at the origin through 2 pi is the cycle that I want you to look at. Okay, so you have to recognize, first of all, from 0 to 2 pi, is that a sine wave or a cosine wave? And it's starting up at the amplitude and not at the origin, so that's clearly a cosine wave. So that's your first decision, and I'm just going to make a note so I don't forget I'm dealing with cosine. And then since it starts up, you know that it's not reflected, so it's going to be positive. You also know that the midline is at the x-axis, right, because it cuts it right in half. So I'm not going to have any sort of vertical shift, otherwise it would be, you know, up here more or down here more. And it starts right on the y-axis, so I also don't have any horizontal shift. So I'll start out by making this one nice and easy. So I guess, again, you have to kind of remind yourself that the equation is y equals a times cosine of b to the x. So we obviously have to figure out what a and b are. Well, I know that a is my amplitude, and that's pretty easy to see that my amplitude is 1, because the height, the min and the max of my cosine wave is 1. So my a is 1. My period, I can also see, is pretty easy. From start to end, it goes through 2 pi. So my period is 2 pi. And remind yourself that period is 2 pi divided by b, right? So if I know my period is 2 pi, I don't want to put equal there. I know my period is 2 pi. I'm going to replace p with 2 pi, and I'm going to solve for b, right? So I know that b is going to be 2 pi divided by 2 pi, which is obviously 1. So b is 1, and I can write my equation. So I'm going to actually use a different color here. And over here I'm going to write my equation. So y equals a, which is 1, times cosine of b to the x, and b is 1. You don't have to put those 1s in there. Certainly up to you. All right, taking a look at this one, I'm going to again highlight it in the one that we're going to look at, and we are going to look, we're going to start here actually. So there we go. I know it doesn't quite, that's the cycle that I want to look at, so starting here and ending here. All right, so you're going to make the equation of that fits that function. So first and foremost, you have to decide is that cosine or sine, and hopefully you recognize that we've got a cosine wave. Is it reflected or not? And no, it's not, because the maximum is starting above. So that's not reflected. And let's see, then we want to maybe note our amplitude, because that's pretty easy to pick out. So our amplitude is 4, right? Because we have a maximum and a minimum at 4 and -4. So because my max and my midline, excuse me, is the x-axis, I also know I don't have any vertical shifts, so I know my amplitude is 4. I can see my period goes from, starts at pi over 2, and it's going to end at 2.5 pi, and I know that you can't see that because I kind of purposely picked this, but this is 2 pi right here, so that's going to be, it's scaling by halves. So from pi halves to 2.5 pi would be a period of 2 pi. And remind yourself again, period is 2 pi divided by b. So if my period is 2 pi, b has to be 1. And last but not least, I am not starting right on my amplitude at the origin. So notice everything is shifted to the right pi halves. So again, this point right here, if it were not shifted, would typically be starting right on the y-axis, and it's not. So it's shifted to the right pi halves unit. Okay, so I'm going to just kind of make a note here. So it shifts to the right pi halves. Any horizontal shift goes in parentheses. So my equation is y equals a times cosine of bx, but in parentheses now x is going to be minus h, right, because I have a horizontal shift. So my equation is y equals 4, because my amplitude is 4, times cosine b is 1, and x minus pi over 2 will actually shift me to the right pi over 2. And that is my equation.